One of the worst things for me as a DbD content creator is to record survivor footage for my videos, as I think many players can agree that playing solo queue is absolutely miserable. Unlike with the killer, I have no control as a survivor. Some survivors give up on the first hook because they got outplayed, or because they just don't want to play against a specific killer, and rather than learning the counterplay, they just go next, and there is nothing I can do as a player to prevent that. Then there are other matches where the killer will play in an extremely tryhardy way, hard tunneling a survivor at 5 gens, slugging, proxy camping, you name it. In those situations, all I can think is that it is what it is. After all, the killer player came to win the match, and even if that tactic is very unfun for survivors, it is objectively one of the best tactics to do. You cannot punish players for wanting to win in a game, which is the same reason I will never blame the survivor players I call Navy SEALs, which bring the most busted items into the match to Gen Rush. Why shouldn't they want to win? There is nothing preventing them for using the best perks and best items. And then of course we have the toxic part of DbD, which I can imagine is a big reason why many players do not enjoy playing DbD and find it stressing. But if I am honest, I like this, because it creates great content and funny footage for the background of my yappings. But it's on matches like this one I recorded for a future video where all of the above things get combined. The reasons why I am so glad that I am not a survivor focused content creator or streamer, because the situation was so miserable that it became genuinely funny. The game started as a usual survivor match in a neutral map with a boon build for a future video. The killer was a Blight, which is a killer I don't mind playing against. Due to corrupt intervention and because of my boons, I had to travel far on the map in order to set up the boon and also start working on a generator. And meanwhile, I could see how the Blight was chasing one of my teammates. As I said, this looked like a completely normal DbD match. There was no toxicity, nobody was AFK, nothing sus from the killer, everyone was playing fair and square. The Blight eventually gets Claudette down, and he hooks her next to a progress generator. The killer also leaves the hook, both to deactivate my boon and also to pressure other gens. I unhook Claudette and start leaving the hook because healing under it is a bad idea, especially against a Blight. But Claudette stood still under the hook for some time, probably expecting to be healed. Well, the Blight returns to the hook, looking like he is going after me, but then he changes his mind and goes after Claudette, who goes down incredibly fast. Unlucky, and this could even be totally my mistake for not body blocking the Claudette, so it's my fault for assuming this player had anti-tunnel perks. The Blight hooks Claudette again, and kinda stays near the hook. Since I know the killer will tunnel if I unhook, and since I know Claudette had no anti-tunnel perks, I decide to go for the unhook only when I can guarantee that Blight will be far away or busy, for example while chasing another survivor. So the moment I see Blight chasing Ada, I come to the hook and... Well, in defense of Claudette, I understand why she did that. She got tunneled out once, there was a high chance the Blight would return to her again, and she just wanted to go next, so I'm not going to blame her. So, the killer is chasing Ada Wong. I go to work on generators, set up a boon. After all, even if this is hard, the match is not lost until the game results are in. Ada Wong goes down after a quite long chase. The killer finds Nancy, so I decide to quickly finish a generator and go for the save. What I didn't notice is that this Ada Wong started to unhook herself, so by the time I went towards her after repairing the generator, this happens. Now the match is truly lost, and the only option is to search for the hatch, or maybe Nancy was capable of having a 4 generator chase, so I decide to work on gens, so at the very least there is some progress in the match. And for the blood points, Nancy eventually goes down, and this is the moment where the match goes sour, as the killer decides to slug for the 4k. Instead of hiding for all the duration of the bleed out, I decide to finish the gen, as I personally do not like going for the hatch, and at this point, losing is not that big of a deal, and I would rather practice looping. So I loop the killer a bit, lose him, go to Nancy to heal her so she can try again, but she goes down and I go down quickly after that due to a skill issue by my part. I decided to stop recording, because it was a game over, right? Well, I started recording again because this blight decided to bleed us out. Mind you, at no point were we toxic to this killer. There was no teabagging, no disgusting plays. We got 2 survivors that gave up on Hook, and now we're stuck here being bled out. At first, I started doing some silly stuff with Nancy just to have some fun, because I found the situation to be crazy. But this was not the first time this has happened to me. Then, I decided that, you know what, let's not waste my time, and I just waited for me to bleed out, so I started working on a script. At this point, I stopped the recording again. But here is what happened. Eventually, after 4 minutes, Nancy bled out. But instead of the killer letting me bleed out, this player decided to pick me up and lead me somewhere. At this point, many of you will think that this killer was leading me to the hatch. But think about it. This is the same blight that just made us waste time being bled out. There was no shot they would give me the hatch. So we eventually arrived at it, and the killer stops. They do not move, and they also do not drop me on the ground like most killers that give hatch would. I did not wiggle, and this killer didn't even force me to stand up like a normal killer would, by dropping me, picking me up, dropping me, and then I stand. At this point, it hit me. This absolute giga chad of a player decided to intentionally wait until I wiggled out in order to confirm that I was active in the match instead of doing something else. This killer wanted to be completely sure that I was in the match so I would see what they were going to do with me, and I knew why. Because the moment I would start wiggling, this killer will drop me, close the hatch in my face, and then perform the memento mori. So at this point, since I was doing the script, I decided to test just how petty this killer was. I refused to wiggle for several minutes. And I kid you not, I did not wiggle for several minutes. I stopped recording because I did not want to have a massive file occupying my PC, as this match was useless for content. I wanted to see if this killer was capable of standing there motionless for an entire hour, which is the maximum time before the servers shut down, added intentionally to prevent these cases from happening. And the worst part is that this was not holding the game hostage technically, so there was nothing I could do to report this player. I could have disconnected or started wiggling to force the match to end, but I just wanted to see how truly petty a player can be. I wanted to see if this player was intentionally being malicious towards me, and so I waited and waited until eventually I decided that this was pointless. Once again, I did not plan to make this video, and I could have been playing something else or Go Next, so I eventually decided to start wiggling. And then, exactly what I predicted happened. This creature started moving, they dropped me to the ground, closed the hatch, took snowballs, and started spamming them on my body, wait until the bleed out timer almost finished, and pick me up once just to make sure they could extend the bleed out timer a bit, and perform the memento mori animation just to extend the time a little bit more. I have been playing DbD for years, since 2016. I have had survivors sandbag me, killers hard tunnel me, and BM me, getting humped up, all that stuff. But I have never been in a match as miserable as this one, and the worst part is that this was all intentionally done, but it's not a bannable offense. At no point again was I held hostage during the match, as I could have DC'd, and I also could have wiggled out earlier to not waste as much time. I just decided to be as petty as the killer. This player was not a cheater that intentionally stream sniped me in order to make my match miserable to get a reaction out of me. After all, I don't think I am that big of a content creator to have cheaters go after me. Sadly, the truth is that if you are known, trolls will try to attack you and make your matches miserable. But I genuinely do not believe this blight cared, because they also slugged Nancy out of the match, so there was no reaction to get from me, as I would usually just delete the footage and go next. However, I still think that these situations should be heavily penalized, and there should be a system put in place so that these types of players get reported. Imagine being a casual player and this is the first match you get of the day, or imagine being a normal player and because you didn't record the match, now you have no evidence to report and ban that player for being a piece of shit. First of all, let's talk about the concept of going next, which I'm sure is going to be a massive hot take, but if you click on the game to play it, I think you should be forced to play that match until you lost, and if you don't want to, disconnect and take the penalty, which I believe should be harsher if you're constantly DCing. If you're the kind of person who constantly disconnects from matches, and I am not talking once per week or 5 times a month, I am talking daily, weekly, various times, you should be put in a loser's queue so you play with other people that disconnect as much. I think it's only fair for the other players that do want to play DbD, and it's for this reason that people just go next on hook, because there is absolutely zero penalty for players to do so, and the players in the match are also left with no bots to compensate. Admittedly, this is a very complicated topic that even the devs admitted there is no easy solution for it. Removing the ability to struggle or try to unhook yourself would require various perks and mechanics to be reworked. As of now, the only solution I thought about that could be fair is the option to concede the match once a survivor is dead with no other survivors hooked yet. So, if a survivor has died while none other have any hook states, once that survivor is sacrificed, the rest get the option to concede the match and finish it, keeping the blood points they earned. This way, if the killer hard tunnels, survivors can just give up, go next, and if the killer does not hard tunnel, yet a survivor still decides to die on the first hook, the match is basically lost, and even as a killer, I personally feel like those games are very unfun to fully play. This concede option would have saved this match that I played, and many others from happening. But what about a situation where the killer decides to slug all 4 survivors on the ground, as you would not be able to concede at that point with this system? This is where another mechanic I think is needed, that I feel like can be programmed into the game already. Let's talk about AFK crows. The game already detects when a survivor has been AFK for a long while. Various players have said that in order to prevent a lot of cases of being held hostage, the moment your player has 3 AFK crows surrounding you, you should lose collision as a player. And if you are on the ground and you have AFK crows, there should be a way to just finish the match for you. The bleed out timer lasts for 4 minutes, which is actually longer than the time it takes to hook a player. The only situation where you as a player would be slugged for so long that crows come to you is if the killer is intentionally slugging you and no survivors come to the rescue, by which point I don't think you as a player would want to play that match. With 3 crows on your body, your bleed out timer should accelerate by a lot, and if you do end up bleeding out, now the other teammates can concede the match. After all, bleeding out is a very weird occurrence that doesn't happen naturally in a lot of the DbD matches. I feel like this system would be a healthy addition to help with a lot of problems with the game in terms of players giving up or killers making the match miserable, as all the examples I talked about earlier are not bannable offenses. You cannot report the killer for slugging everyone for 4 minutes, nor can you report players for giving up because the devs simply do not care about this issue, because truth be told, you cannot force players to play your game. The only situation that the killer would be able to do with this system in place is slug all 4 survivors and individually go after them to pick them up and drop them to reset the AFK crows. But this would take so much time and would be so insanely specific that I think all 4 players reporting this person would warrant for a ban. I just personally found this petty situation very funny, and I was wondering if any of you had absolutely miserable DbD solo queue experiences like this, where the concede or the AFK crows system could have helped. I am not talking about stuff that is personally targeting you, like a homophobic killer going after someone with a pride flag, because that is actually a bannable offense. I am talking something more like this killer, where they decided to be petty just because. Let me know in the comments, and as always, thank you for watching and have a nice day.